Doomsday Clock is finally upon us. The first issue came out last week and it was... Okay, to be clear, I liked the first issue of Doomsday Clock. I liked it a lot. I thought it had some of Gary Frank's best work of his career, and I felt like it was able to invoke the feel of Watchmen without straight up copying it. It's everything a follow-up to Watchmen should have been, everything that before Watchmen wasn't. Minutemen aside. But the reason why I gave pause before, the reason why I'm not jumping up and down saying this is the best thing to come out in years is because this issue was pretty much all set up. But that doesn't mean there's nothing to talk about here. Today I want to talk about the first issue of Doomsday Clock, talk about what happened, and see if we can figure out where the series can go from there. Full spoilers for the first issue of Doomsday Clock. If you haven't read it yet and you still want to be surprised, maybe turn off this video and go read it and then come back so we can discuss. Everyone else, let's dive in. So what did I mean in the intro when I said that this issue was pretty much just set up? Well, for all intents and purposes, the most important thing that Doomsday Clock 1 did was introduce us to this brand new world we're about to dive into. The year is 1992, 6 years after the events of the original Watchmen. It's been discovered that Adrian Veidt, also known as Ozymandias, orchestrated the fake alien invasion of New York, which killed millions in an attempt to end the Cold War. This causes the world to collapse to the brink of nuclear war. The US and the Russians are fighting worse than they ever have. People are rioting in the streets. People are hunting for Veidt to answer what he's done, but he is nowhere to be found. All that occurs in the first 6 or so pages of the story. It shows us the overall setting of the world we're about to enter. On the next few pages, we're introduced to our main characters from the Watchmen universe, starting with a new Rorschach. We learn very early on that this is not the same character that blew up at the end of the original Watchmen, but we don't know who he is, where he comes from, why he decided to take up the mantle of Rorschach, and why he's also replicating the original speech pattern. But we do know he's a different character because he reveals himself to be an African-American man to our other new main character, Erica Manson, the marionette. New Rorschach is trying to break her out of prison, but she won't go without her husband, Marcos Mayes, the mime. Both characters are villains in the Watchmen universe, and like the original Masked Heroes, they're based on characters from the old Charlton comics. In this case, Punch and Julie. They eventually do break out of prison, and Rorschach takes them to meet his boss, Ozymandias, who is alive but dying of cancer. He needs the couple's help to locate Dr. Manhattan, who had been missing since the events of the original. Ozymandias feels that Dr. Manhattan is the only person who can save the world right now, and in exchange for Marionette and Mime's help, he is willing to introduce them to their previously unknown son. And that's really it. That's all we really know about this series so far. The main driving force for the Watchmen characters is find Dr. Manhattan. But the thing about Doomsday Clock is it wasn't just supposed to be a sequel to Watchmen. It was supposed to connect the Watchmen universe to the DC universe, to be the big crossover payoff to a year's worth of buildup that started with last year's DC Universe Rebirth. For months, they promised us that this would be the series where Superman and Dr. Manhattan meet. I mean, they even put it on the variant cover. And they'd show us other covers like Batman reading Rorschach's journal, the Joker putting his makeup on with a nostalgia makeup case, Lex Luthor sitting in his chair with Ozymandias' hand on his shoulder. But we didn't get any kind of crossover in this chapter. Superman and Lois Lane are in the book, but they're at the very end, and their story has nothing to do so far with the main Watchmen story. All that's happening in their side of the story is that Superman had a nightmare about the night his parents died when they were killed in a car accident. Which is interesting in and of itself because that's the origin story for the New 52 Superman. The Superman that's currently active in the DC universe is the pre-New 52 Superman. That Superman's parents didn't die in a car accident. Jonathan Kent died from a heart attack during the Brainiac invasion, and Martha Kent was alive and well. But it is things like that that make Doomsday Clock so interesting, not for the answers it's giving us right away, but for the questions it's giving us. Why does Superman remember this car accident? Is it because of Dr. Manhattan's meddling? Who exposed the New York disaster? Was it part of Rorschach's journal? Did Ozymandias contract cancer from all those years he spent giving it to Dr. Manhattan's friends? Things like that. We have all these new questions rather than any sort of answer, but in a way I'm glad they did this. It shows that this isn't going to be some stereotypical comic book event like, say, Secret Empire was. Books like that often fall victim to having big action in every single issue and then ending on a cliffhanger, getting resolved in the next chapter, and then just going from one cliffhanger to the next. Doomsday Clock doesn't feel like it's gonna do that. Even after one issue, it feels like it's just gonna be a very slow burn over the course of the next year. I get the sense that this is going to be a real character piece, really getting into exploring the differences between the Watchmen characters and the DC heroes, and really showing us why one style for one doesn't work with the other. And unlike before Watchmen, the prequel series that often felt like it was just trying to shock people rather than do something interesting with the characters, this feels like it's going to actually do something interesting with the characters. It doesn't just want to be part of the Watchmen lore, and it doesn't just want to be a part of the DC universe. It wants to say something not about DC comics, but about superhero comics in general and the state of the world. And in a way, that was the point of the original Watchmen back in '86. The series is supposed to be 12 issues long, and I hope that the whole thing isn't as slow as this first issue was, but this is a very good foundation to lay this type of event on. Hopefully by issue 2, we'll start to get more answers and we'll start to see more involvement from the DC heroes and maybe just get a little bit closer to the confrontation between Superman and Dr. Manhattan. And hopefully as the series goes on, we'll get ever so closer to not just getting an answer to why DC had been the way they'd been for the past few years, but why comics in general have been the way they've been since Watchmen came out. But that's just me. What did you guys think of Doomsday Clock issue 1? Did you like it? Did you feel like it answered anything, or are you upset that it just raised more questions? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. Tuesdays, my brother Bob talks about games. Wednesdays, I talk about comic books. Saturday, we both talk about a random game from our collection in a show called The Backlog. And all of those are debuting over on our Twitch channel. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, those shows will go live first on twitch.tv/wolfden. We will be in the chat talking to you guys about today's episode and maybe even a little afterwards, if you're lucky. So check us out over on Twitch, or if you don't want to, you can still find all of those videos right here on YouTube immediately after they air on Twitch. And on YouTube, you can still catch, always, Wolf Den Live, the live YouTube show where we sit down right here and just talk about all the news that's happening in the world of nerd culture. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share it with a friend who also thought that Doomsday Clock was pure setup. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.